here, Megan Shago with Century 21 Award in Downtown Anaheim. I'm here today with my friend Cynthia Ward. She is a neighbor here and she's also an architectural historian. Cynthia is going to tell us a little bit today about the different architectural styles that we can find right here in downtown Anaheim. This house that we're at is actually my family's home on Clementine Street. It's a bit of a puzzle of what type of architectural style it is. So Cynthia is going to tell us about it.
Well, Megan, your house has caused quite a bit of consternation among the history lovers in Anaheim, but I am going to say that this is a prairie-style home. You can tell by the hip roof on the two-story portion of it, and then it drops down to the one-story unit with a little bit of a Tudor Revival look to it. A little bit eclectic, but it is definitely based on the prairie style of architecture.
That makes sense to me. Now, some people have called it Spanish, but would Spanish mean that it needs to have an arch window or an arch somewhere to be Spanish?
There are a number of different Spanish styles that we're going to take a look at today, and we'll talk about the difference between them. I don't see any of those Spanish elements here other than a red tile roof, and that's not always Spanish. There are a lot of different variants that
Good point. Thank you very much. Well, here we are at the Wilkie Stoffel House, built in 1894. Some of us know it as the Red Cross House. Cynthia, can you tell us about this architectural style?
Megan, when most people think of Victorian, this is the style that they're talking about. The Victorian era actually spanned from the 1830s to the turn of the century. But in most people's minds, when you think Victorian, it's this type of house, which is a Queen Anne. It's very ornate, much more fancy than anything that we're building today, obviously. It's got what we would call gingerbread and the spindle work. It's usually got different cladding materials. It's much more ornate and fancy.
Do you think the more money that people had, the fancier they made their Victorian house in that era?
Well, that's always been the case, but in this particular instance, we had all these factories that were left over from the Civil War that were retooled to turn out building materials. And so suddenly all of this fancy gingerbread and spindle work was very easily obtained for a very low price. You could actually get it from a catalog and your carpenter can put it on your house. So you could suddenly have a much fancier house than you could have previous to the Civil War, where everything had to be carved by hand.
The home that we are standing in front of right now is a sort of transitional style of home. Cynthia, can you tell us more about this architecture?
This is a transitional four-square, so it's kind of a reaction to the Victorian period of overabundance and all that gingerbread that we saw in the Wilkie Stoffel house. They were looking for something simple, but it's not quite a Craftsman, so it's kind of a midway point for the Edwardian period. So you do see a lot of the architectural detail, but not quite as much as a true Victorian.
Well, this home is absolutely beautiful and a great example of the transitional style. Cynthia, here we are in the historic Palm District in downtown Anaheim at one of my favorite bungalows in the neighborhood, specifically because of the sunburst pattern on the front-facing gable. Could you tell us a little bit about this bungalow?
This is an adorable bungalow, a great example of it. One of my favorites in this district as well. And we've always believed it to be a Pacific Ready Cut kit house. It's got all of the markings, and we've even found the grease pencil under the drawer bottoms. We haven't yet found the exact floor plan in any of the catalogs, but we'll come across it. One of my favorite things, again, the gable face vent sunburst, but also the brickwork that you can see has a really distinctive pattern to it. For a small house, they took a lot of care with the details, and that's what makes it so charming.
What is really the difference between a bungalow and a Craftsman?
Well, it is possible to have a Craftsman bungalow, but there is a difference between the two. And the Craftsman, a true Craftsman style, it's usually 2 stories or 1.5 stories where you see, the 1.5 story is where you see living space carved out of the attic and little dormers bumped out for extra room. A bungalow is 1 story, it's very low to the ground, and it's in keeping with that back to nature feeling of the arts and crafts period. So once again, it's a lifestyle as well as an architectural style. So that's the difference. As a bungalow is kind of low in 1 story, and a true Craftsman is a 2-story home or 1.5 stories.
Cynthia, this house has stucco and a red tile roof. Is it a Spanish style house?
Megan, a lot of people will lump the Pueblo Revival into the Spanish subtype, but it's actually a purely American form. It's based on the Native American homes of the Southwest here in the U.S. The flat roof is typical of the Southwest architecture, and even those vigas, the beams that are sticking out, today they're decorative, but originally they would have been used to actually hold up the roof of twigs and things that would have made up the original roof. Following World War I, we borrowed a lot of European architectural styles from soldiers who came back from Europe and had seen things in the English countryside or the French countryside. And one of the things that they developed was the Tudor Revival style, just like we see here with the half timbering in the front gable face and the casement windows, really hearkening back to old-time England.
And when you say Tudor Revival, I always think it's a Tudor style house, but revival, what does that mean?
Well, a genuine Tudor would have been about the 1600s. So this is a revival in that we've borrowed from that period. The half timbering in a true Tudor would actually be holding the house together, not just a decorative element.
Cynthia, this house has always intrigued me. It has a very high-pitched roof. What style house is this?
This is actually a French Eclectic, and it comes from the same family as the Tudor that we saw before, from the same time period of returning from World War I, and all eyes have been on Europe for all of these years. So we're seeing the magazines and newspaper articles with pictures of the French countryside and the English countryside. And so that's the influence for this architectural style. And what sets this apart from the English style is actually that roof line that you talked about. It's a very high-pitched roof, but it's not a gable face. You notice it's a hipped roof, or sometimes there will be a gable with just a clipped gable. It's got kind of that funny shape to it. But again, it's got the plaster surface, the divided light windows, and kind of that old world feel to it.
Cynthia, here we find ourselves on Helena Street in the Hoskins Historic District, mostly comprised of ranch-style houses. Can you tell us a little bit about the ranch-style house?
These homes were built in the late 40s and the 50s, and they're built on much bigger lots. And the ranch style was really, it was a lifestyle. It wasn't just an architectural style. It was about the California dream with the swimming pool and this house that took up all of this real estate as it sprawled in one story across this entire large building lot. And so these housing advertisements were advertising not just real estate, but the California dream. And they brought people out from the East Coast who were tired of being stacked on top of each other on these tiny little building lots. So it came together with the whole post-war boom of people coming to California and buying into this dream of the swimming pool in California. Unfortunately, that also makes them very much in danger because of the large lots and the fact that they're one story and don't make the most of the building lot necessarily. People are tearing them down and putting up McMansions, and we're losing a part of American history in that way.
Cynthia, we've talked about a few different styles of Craftsman homes. This one is an airplane Craftsman. Can you explain to us why it's called an airplane Craftsman?
Well, Megan, there's actually two schools of thought to that theory, and either of them could be legit. One is the idea that it looks like an airplane with, you know, the cockpit up top and then the wide sweeping eaves representing the wings. The other is that it's almost like an air control tower, that when you're up on the second floor, there's generally windows all the way around, and it's usually very airy and spacious, and you can see all the way around, and it would feel like one would imagine it would feel inside of like an air control tower. So either of those theories seem to work. Nobody really knows what the origins are.
Well, the part you said about the windows all around, this particular house does have that. The top level has windows all around, and the windows actually slide down into the wall, so it's all open.
You know, those are very rare. I've never actually seen those in Anaheim before. I'd actually like to see that.